Shalom, everyone. The other day I was driving along Blanco Road, just down the street from our beloved shul. I was taking my kids to school, and the sun was just coming out, in the sense that you could see quite a bit of it now, and there were lots of cars on the road at that hour. I'm assuming there were a bunch of other parents also taking their kids to school. And as I'm driving, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a squirrel. He must have been a very brave squirrel, because this dude decided he was just going to sprint into the middle of the road in an attempt to cross the whole thing. He had some chutzpah, I'll tell you. Now, don't ask me what was on the other side for him. Apparently, whatever it was something worth getting squished into 1,000 pieces over. But he went. Dun 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 dun. All right. I've been driving in Texas for a while now, and during my tenure here on these fine roads, I have noticed a certain pattern with regard to our fellow tree-dwelling rodents. Usually, if a squirrel decides to cross a street, or dart across, he or she, I guess, will make it if, and this is a big if they just decide to sprint from one side to the other. But sometimes I have noticed halfway through their trek across the road, their little rodent brain will reconsider the act, and they will turn tail, pun intended, and head back from whence they came. And when this happens, just based on my personal observation, it rarely ends well. In fact, it usually ends with a squished squirrel. So the other day, I'm watching all of this go down. I'm actually rooting for the squirrel to make it across. I didn't even speed up to get him. I was just hoping that he'd get to the other side. So he starts, dun-dun-dun, 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 and he's going, and it looks like a game of Frogger. Remember that game? He's going in and out of cars, and when he gets to about the halfway mark, something changes in his little squirrely brain, and he turns around and starts heading back. Big mistake. It's obvious that when he does this about face, poor squirrel friend gets disoriented, and now he has a lot of decisions to make very quickly. And he almost gets mowed down by a huge Jeep. This freaks him out even more. So he goes further and almost gets nailed by a van. Finally, he gets the courage to do a complete sprint. But like I said, he was disoriented, so it seems like he miscalculated how far it was. And as he was crossing over back to where he came from, you guys are looking so intense right now. I've given many sermons. You have never been this engaged ever. I just got to talk about squirrel death, and it's okay. All right, I can't give away you the end of the story right now. I'll tell you at the end of the sermon. Maybe you'll pay attention through it. I'm sorry. I've got to talk about Torah here at synagogue. I know. We'll leave him right now where he is. Like I said, I'll promise I'll get back. But for right now, I want to focus on this particular idea. Changing your mind can have a disastrous effect. And if there's anyone who knows about this, it's Pharaoh from the Exodus story, whom we will read about tomorrow in Exodus chapters 13 through 15. But let's set up the stage leading up to this decision. God had already spoken to Moses. 10 plagues had shaken Egypt to its core. Death had literally entered every Egyptian home and killed the firstborn. And finally, Pharaoh relented and let the Israelites go. But then he changed his mind. We're told in Exodus 14:5, quote, "When Pharaoh of Egypt was told that the Jewish people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their mind and said, 'What have we done? We have let the Israelites go, and we have lost their services.'" Now, this didn't take long. Keep in mind, Pharaoh's heart had already been hardened time and time and time again during the plagues, and now his soul had returned to a state of pride and utter control. Perhaps he realized he wasn't just letting go of a workforce. In his mind, he was losing his power, his identity as Pharaoh, and dominion of his land and his people. And rather than humble himself before God, Pharaoh once again chose rebellion. Now, this change of mind was not just a small thing or a tiny endeavor. It actually leads to a very interesting situation. You have the greatest army on earth at the time. The Egyptian army was a force to be reckoned with, and they are chasing an oppressed people that God had chosen to protect. Pharaoh wasn't just fighting Israel anymore. He was fighting God himself. And we know what happens next. This is from the Torah. Quote, "The water flowed back and covered the Egyptian chariots and horsemen, and the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites drowned in the sea. None of them survived." All of Pharaoh's army drowned because he couldn't surrender. All because he changed his mind. Now, what's interesting is that all parties knew that God had already decided the outcome of all of this way before it even started. Everyone knew the Israelites were going to be free. This was non-negotiable. Pharaoh's change of heart didn't derail God's plan at all. It only destroyed him and his army. You see, dear friends, God's promises do not hinge on human approval. If God wants to do something, then it is going to be done, whether or not we agree with it or not. Now, sure, there are several examples in the Torah and in the Tanakh where human beings have a dialogue with God, a conversation, and seemingly they alter the course of what is going to happen. But if God is master of the universe and in control of all time and all destiny anyway, God knew those people were going to have that conversation to begin with. When it comes to God's will, one can perhaps delay the outcome, but you can never deny it. Pharaoh's resistance didn't trap the Israelites, it trapped himself, and in the end, his unwillingness to let go cost him everything. When we resist what God has declared, when we go back on what we know is right, we risk not only our blessing, but our very lives. Has God ever helped you let go of something, only for you to change your mind when fear creeps in, or when the loss seems too great, or when pride whispers you're still in control? Maybe you forgave someone, but then later bitterness came rushing back. Maybe you surrendered to bad habits or a bad relationship, but then you second-guessed yourself or God's plan and went rushing back to that toxic thing or that toxic person. When we do this, friends, it's just like that squirrel running across Blanco Road. We know that freedom and security and happiness awaits on the other side, but our own fears and insecurity keeps pulling us back to the way we came from, oftentimes to complete disaster. Pharaoh's story is a warning, but also a call to trust. It reminds us that God's will be done, but we have a choice in how we participate in it. Will we fight God or follow him? Will we harden our hearts like Pharaoh, or will we open our minds? I pray that we will not be like Pharaoh, who changed his mind and paid the ultimate price. Let us be a people who obey God and God's plan, even when it costs us, even when it stretches us, and perhaps even when it scares us. Because on the other side of obedience is deliverance, freedom, and life. All right, I promised I would tell you what happened to our squirrel friend from the beginning of the sermon. I see you're all waiting very patiently. All right, anyway, he started sprinting back to where he came from. For full squirrely speed, I might add. Those things can get pretty quick. He was really close, and there was a white Nissan right on his tail. Again, pun intended. And right as he crossed the finish line to the other side, I swear it looked like the Nissan clipped the tip of his bushy little appendage So other than maybe a docked tail, he walked away from that whole episode completely unscathed. And if there's anything to learn from all of this, it's that changing your mind can have disastrous effects because God's plan can sometimes be a tough nut to crack. Shabbat Shalom, Moadim L'Simcha.